Hello and welcome to Public Affairs Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. I'm Linda Cohn with the League of Women Voters, and the League of Women Voters is getting ready to celebrate its 100th anniversary in just 2 years' time. Throughout all those 98 years, this has been our profession of faith, that an informed and active citizenry is the proven way to a better life for everyone. We know this to be true because we've lived it, we've seen it work. It was a surge of citizen activism that led to the adoption of our beloved 19th Amendment, the Women's Suffrage Amendment. I am certain that everyone at this table can tell a story of civic success or disappointment, but it's always a story of being the men and the women in the arena, nudging us just a little bit closer to perfection. Tonight, we're going to focus on young adults and civic life. Please call us with your questions or comments. We'll take as many of your phone calls as possible. The number is 713-807-1794. That's 713-807-1794. If you like to use Twitter, you can reach us with the hashtag LWVHouston. With us now are from the University of Houston Downtown, history professor Jean Preuss. From Baker Ripley, community engagement director Gracie Garces. And from our sister civic organization, Mi Familia Vota, Nabila Mansour. Later, we'll talk to student leaders from Northside High School, the University of Houston, and Lone Star College, Tomball. Again, please call us with your questions or comments. The number is 713-807-1794, and welcome to you all. First, Gracie Garces, tell us a bit about Baker Ripley and its historic role in nourishing civic life in Houston.
Sure. So thanks so much again, Linda, to you and to the League of Women Voters for inviting Baker Ripley to participate. Always an honor to be amongst people who are totally dedicated to this cause. I think we're all familiar with the work that we do at the table, but for those who are watching at home, as Linda mentioned, I am Gracie Garces, the Director of Community Engagement for Baker Ripley. Baker Ripley is a community development organization, local community development organization, the largest traditional nonprofit in the state of Texas. Community engagement is truly at the core of all of the work that we do. We believe that we take a very holistic approach to engagement. We have a variety of major array of services that we offer for our neighbors, including our young adults. We offer senior services through our Sheltering Arms Senior Services, Workforce Solution Programming. We have charter schools in our Gulfton and East End campuses. And we're building and we're moving, as I mentioned earlier, into our 6th community center in East Aldine later on this summer. The other community centers are in Cleveland, Ripley, and Pasadena, the Northside community, Greater Hobby, East End, and Gulfton. So we take a very appreciative approach to the services that we offer. We listen to our neighbors, our young adults, and kind of base the programs that we offer at these centers and through our organization on what we hear. And so we provide immigration services, adult education, youth programming, and of course, civic engagement, which I'm really looking forward to discussing.
So you have a whole list of programs that are kind of nitty-gritty. You teach people job skills, you teach people who aspire to be American citizens how to fill out those applications and prepare for the citizenship test. This is pretty much nuts and bolts stuff. And yet you also make room for civic engagement.
Right, and I think
which is more of an overarching and
it is, and I think that that's what has really helped us work closely and successfully with our partners as well as our young adults, is having that ongoing relationship with them. They know us, they know our centers. We're in the schools through partnerships with the school districts in Aldine, Pasadena, and Houston. We have youth leaders that are with these young leaders on a regular daily basis. So we're not just going to them to talk about voting. It's a much bigger picture. It's a trust that we have established, and I think that's why it truly works, because they know our faces and they know that if we're telling them this is something meaningful, let's work, let's talk about how you can get more engaged, they're willing to trust and to kind of dive in.
Nabila, tell us about Mi Familia Votan, the sister civic organizations that you work with.
Right. So I'm with Mi Familia Vota, and we have a really unique partnership right now with OCA Greater Houston. OCA Greater Houston is an Asian American organization, and they're a national organization that has a chapter here in Houston for many years. And what we've done is we've formed this partnership where not only do we try to give those leadership skills to the young people in the high schools that are of Latino or other minority races, but also concentrate on Asian American students. Because we really believe that those are the students, those underrepresented communities are the key to getting people more involved, especially young people. So our mission statement is really geared toward trying to get young people involved, because that is a group that has really for a very long time been almost neglected, right? Like this idea that young people, we can't vote, so why even bother trying to get to them? We'll get to them later. No, it starts at high school. How do you build a pipeline of ethical leaders of tomorrow? You start early. You make sure that they're informed, you give them the tools that they need, and then when they start voting, they're not only just getting registered to vote, but they're also becoming informed voters for life. So we do these civic engagement clubs, and we have partnerships with different school boards. HISD, we're working now in expanding into the Fort Bend schools. We're in a couple of Fort Bend schools, and we're expanding next year even more. And we do these workshops, and we have a lot of sister organizations like Baker Ripley. We've worked with them in the past. And we do these monthly workshops where we give them the skills that they need, not only just to, much like what Gracie was saying, not just teaching them, voting is important. We give them a bunch of different skills. We teach them how to apply to college, get their resume spruced up, because summer is coming. They want to apply for jobs. But then also in those programs, we also talk about the importance of voting. We have speakers come from various different areas. They'll talk about how they have incorporated a very active civic life, but they've also done whatever profession that they are involved in. So we make sure that they have a well-rounded understanding of how the system works and why it's important for them to get involved. And we do this with voter education classes, civic classes, and of course our youth leadership program.
Jean Price from the University of Houston. Historically, the purpose of a free public education was steeped in the idea that we needed to prepare people for citizenship so they can function in a democracy. True?
That's absolutely true. One of the things about the United States, when we were founded, the world really hadn't seen a democracy in several thousand years. And out of the Enlightenment, people were thinking, well, we don't need aristocracy anymore. That there needs to be, people need to make these decisions, people need to participate, people need to participate in their government, need to form the government. And so here in the United States, it was being found, we decided we're going to get rid of hereditary titles, we're going to get rid of titles of nobility, we're going to educate our people. This is what it's Thomas Jefferson, and not just Jefferson, but Benjamin Rusk and others, who said, we need to build up a group of people, the best, the smartest, the most intelligent, and they're going to be the ones to lead us into the future. And so the idea of public education was born. Now I'm compressing a lot, but that's the idea behind public schools. That's one of the things that America did differently than other nations, is we democratized education. At the University of Houston downtown, we take that very seriously. We also consider that higher ed, at least since 1965, has been democratized, because we opened up the doors after World War II with GI Bill of Rights and others to get more people to take a university education. And not everybody does. In Texas, if you look at 8th graders, if you take 100 8th graders, only about 20 of them are ever going to get a college degree, and that's 2-year or 4-year. So not everyone is going to college, despite what a lot of people say. But there are a lot of people who do try to go to college, and college is open for everyone. And we realize that education is very important. There's so much technology, so many changes. You know, the good old days where you think, well, I can just, you know, get a wrench and fix something. Nowadays, you go to your auto mechanic. First thing they do when you've got that light on is they plug a computer into your car to find out what's wrong. And so that is true all across the board. So education is quite important. But one of the other misconceptions people have about education, especially higher education, is that, you know, in colleges and universities you've got these, you know, egg-headed professors who sit around and gaze their navels, and that's not really the case. We have become very well aware that we need to give back to the communities in which we live. And we need to participate in those communities, and especially in underserved areas. University of Houston downtown, we're right downtown. And of course, downtown is changing a lot, but there's still a lot of underserved areas within the community. And how do we take the knowledge that we're preparing our students with, and how do we give back to those communities? How do we help improve the communities? And that's one of the ideas behind civic engagement at the four-year colleges. It's giving back, participating, being a part of that community, not something isolated and, you know, that nobody ever sees and it doesn't serve any good. There is a public good to public education.
And in the 1800s and early 1900s, a surge of immigration from throughout the world, mostly Northern Europe, a little bit Southern Europe and other places as well. People coming to America, the schools were what made them Americans, made this first generation of scholars Americans. Have we lost that?
That's a good question. Have we lost that idea of being American? I don't think so. I mean, you know, right now immigration is a big topic, but if we look at the reason, why do people pack up everything they can carry in some cases? Maybe that's all they could take. What money they could take if they were allowed to take their money. Why do they go and move into a foreign country where the language may be different, where the people are certainly different, where beliefs are different, that they may have to change themselves if not for the fact that they see opportunity, that they're willing to leave everything behind for that opportunity. That's what made America America, is that we saw the chance that we could remake ourselves, our world, our government. And I think immigrants today still bring that. I mean, certainly there's some ties to home and they look back. But the one thing they want to do is they want to take advantage of that opportunity. If you ask most immigrants why they're here, it's because they believe in America. And I think that the focus of a lot of debate today has gotten away from that.
Then and now, have the schools under pressure to show achievement, show good performance? Are they veering away from making time in the regular school day, K through 12 and university both, from the type of citizenship activities, from the assemblies that celebrated, debated, explored various aspects of the American experience? Do we now just teach the kids math, let them take the test, and get on with it?
That's a really good question, and I think what you see, I mean, I've really been impressed by a lot of our young people today and those coming in, is that they are very engaged and very interested in volunteering. They're members of organizations. They participate in their communities, even though all the requirements, like you mentioned, are in the schools. They're still finding ways of participating, probably this generation more than any other. It has this spirit of volunteerism.
What I'm seeing are two community partner organizations. It's not the schools that are doing civic engagement, it's community partners like the representatives we have here today. Is that something that just happened? Was there any point where a decision was made, either politically or administratively? What's changed and why?
Well, I think it's a twofold process, two-way street. The schools do have a lot more pressure, and there is more emphasis on the academics and the outcomes. But I think that students, young people, are reaching out, looking for opportunities, and these community organizations are stepping up. So it's there. You have this meeting of students who have a desire to go out and make a difference. and organizations that are come and empowering them to do so.
Thank you, Jean. I'm going to ask you, Gracie, how do you manage to develop these wonderful relationships with the schools? They have to trust you. They are trusting you with their precious students, so they have to trust you to be absolutely politically neutral, not merely nonpartisan, but kind of vacant.
Yes.
And how do you talk about issues that are important to students without maybe veering a little bit too close to advocacy, which is totally repugnant?
Right.
How do you do that? How do you
Definitely.
manage that?
So I think one thing that definitely helps us, and I'll let Nabila speak for Mi Familia Vota, is the history that we have in the region. So we've been around for more than 110 years. So we didn't gain the trust of the school districts overnight. It's taken some cultivating and some nurturing and some proven results. Just the fact that we can go in, have these discussions, and we believe that we allow our neighbors to lead the conversation. We don't go in and say, let's talk about this. We allow the students to kind of guide us. But I think that's really what has helped is our historical reputation, our good reputation. I wanted to kind of go back to what the professor was saying earlier about our immigrant and refugee neighbors
Yes.
and why they come come to America, following the American dream, yes, seeking that, yes. I think a lot of them also come because they're seeking the human dream. You know, they want to be able to preserve their dignity. They're leaving their homes in various countries because they're being suppressed or they're going through violence. They're coming here for a reason. And I think when we're dealing with our young adults, we've had these conversations about why don't we, or why aren't they, or why aren't we doing this in the school districts? And for us, it's why don't we ask? Let's ask the questions. So when we've had these conversations with our young adults, we ask them, what is it that's missing? Or for them, they have their government classes, but what they're learning in their government classes, it's just the history of it. You know, no one's really talking to them or allowing them to have conversations beyond that. The why is it important? What are the possibilities? What opportunities are available? And how can you connect to them? So when we go in there, you know, we have a proven reputation of letting them, asking them, letting them guide the conversation, and then telling them if you're interested in doing X, Y, Z, these are organizations that you can partner with to do that.
How closely are you monitored by school administration? Do they pretty much, you have to present a curriculum? Do you have to, is there someone in the classroom? Do you work mostly with after-school clubs?
So it's twofold. I think going back to the holistic approach that Baker Ripley takes, we have our youth program and we have our community engagement team. So our youth leader is on the campus in one high school, each of our 6 target neighborhoods. They're there every single day working with at least 20 young leaders. They're participating on a daily basis. But then we have what we call high school empowerment fairs. So every fall and spring semester, we go back in and we bring in about 200 to 300 juniors and seniors, and we talk about leadership. We talk about financial literacy. We talk about relationships that they need to establish with law enforcement, right? So we do that part of it, and that's kind of how we're cultivating. The school districts know us. They know that we're going to have these ongoing conversations. We're housed in these high schools, right? So our youth team is there. But coupled with that, we have our community engagement team that goes in and does the additional voter registration, the DVR trainings, and then also builds on that, the leadership and soft skills that they're establishing through the youth program, and allowing them to have these conversations and talking to them very importantly about the fact that just because of your status or origin that you come from, it may not make you eligible to vote. Doesn't mean that you cannot get involved in the process. That is really important because at Baker Ripley, our 6 target neighborhoods are among the lowest when it comes to low propensity. Like, it is dismal. And so we have a lot of immigrant and refugee students who don't think that they have to be eligible to go and call their elected official or call one of the community partners. They're fearful of the fact that they're going to be asked, well, are you this or are you that? And so for us, it's kind of cultivating that trust with them, using that trust that we've established, and really getting them to understand that the only thing you need to be able to create change is caring enough about your community and wanting to make that impact.
Very important. We tend to conflate voting and civic engagement. And civic engagement is more than just voting. Do you find that to be the case in your work?
Definitely,
Nabila?
definitely. This idea of being an active member of your community and having an active civic life is something that we really try to inculcate in our students. And also, I just want to make one quick point about young people. I'm so excited about the young people in this country. And I just think just the March for Our Lives rally that we had last week or 2 weeks ago, the student walkouts, the way the young people have taken hold of this moment and put and worked really hard to bring attention to an issue that is a life or death issue to them is inspiring. And it makes me really hopeful for the future. So I think sometimes we don't give our young people enough credit. And I think they might surprise all of us, right? Like I remember hearing a speech by one of the young ladies at the March for Our Lives rally, and she said something like, "We're Generation Z because we're going to end this right now, and there's not going to be a generation after us." And so when you hear things like that, you're like, "Oh my gosh, these young people are articulate. They know what they want to do, and they are going to do it no matter what anyone says."
So you give them the tools, and they've taken off on their own.
Right. So what we do is we really believe on like listening to the students. What is it that's important to them? What issues are they most concerned about? So we do a summer program where we spend a large part of our time trying to figure out what is the agenda for the youth, right? Like what is it that in your perfect world, what is it that you want? Okay, this is what you want. Do it. How do you do it, right? So we talk a lot about those resources that we can provide them to making that happen. And we also try to hear their stories because we really think that we come from a lot, our student populations come from a lot of different cultural backgrounds. And I think also a big part of the American dream is knowing that America is this melting pot of a lot of different religions, cultures, diversity, and to be proud of that. So there is a really large cultural component to our programming where we bring in a lot of different performers or people that come from very different backgrounds, and they are proud of where they came from, and they're proud to be American at the same time. And that's very important because once you have a good sense of your own self, then you can start doing those things that will make it better for everyone.
I'm going to ask this question of everyone, Nabila, but I'm starting with you. Think back to your own school days.
Right.
Were the students who were civically engaged, maybe debate team members, or they did other extracurricular activities, or they were the ones passing out flyers close to Election Day, remind your parents to vote, and if you're old enough and register, go vote too. Did they wind up leading different lives from those who were either not inclined to participate, maybe a little bit indifferent, or outright hostile to the idea of civic life?
So there's this idea that voting is a habit, right? Like I don't know, I'm sure you guys have heard this. Like if you vote once, like every 4 years, it's not really a habit. But if they say if you vote like 4 times in a row in 4 elections, then it becomes a habit, it becomes rote. So what I do find is that those that started young, they continued that and they made it a part of their everyday life, no matter what profession they went into, right? They could have become a doctor, an attorney, what have you. But that was an important component of their life. And everyone that has really made civic an active member of the civic community, they have all said the same thing, that our involvement from an early age only helped our professional career. And so being involved at a young age, we know helps them even professionally. It doesn't matter if you don't run for office. It doesn't matter if you don't decide to be the next mayor of your city. But just being involved also helps you in other aspects of your life. And so in school, when I'm trying to remember, I was actually not very involved in school, and I regret that. And as I got older, I was like, why wasn't I involved in school? But I look back at those folks that were, and I am just so impressed with where they are now. And I'm late to the game, but I've kind of made it my life mission to make sure that everybody else is not late to the game.
Chief Price, you're next. What do you think?
That's funny that you should ask that. It just reminded me of something. I was in debate in high school and public speaking, and I thought for a while that maybe I should run for public office. But I always said, well, I kind of could be a hothead and sometimes say inappropriate things. But of course now the bar is changed, so maybe that's not an obstacle anymore. But I was in college, a freshman in college, and I was talking to a history professor who was a mentor to me. And I said, I was kind of cynical. It's like, why vote? Because what difference does it make? And he stopped what he was doing and he pulled a history book. And at the back of every history book is a list of presidential elections. And he showed me these numbers. And he said, he goes, if you think your vote doesn't count, look, he goes, in every election, this number is recorded. Those are people who voted. And that's where your vote counts. And I'd never thought of it before until he said that. And I've remembered that ever since then, and that your vote does count. I hear students sometimes say they're cynical, right? What difference does it make? Who cares what I think? But I hear other young people saying the exact opposite. They want to do things. They will go out and march. They'll picket. They'll protest. And those are great. Those are one way. But I also hear them say they want to run for office. Some of them are planning to. We've had some who have run for office. That's another way. But also just volunteering and being a part of the community. As you were saying earlier, voting and that is one aspect. You also need people to call your representatives, because if you want to protest the way things are, if you keep electing the same people, that's not going to help. You need to change the people at the table to get people at the table. Or you need to change their minds. And so it's not just protesting, but it's letter writing, it's phone call. Actually, email is better because all the letters go through safeguards now. It may be months before they get a letter. But emails, phone calls, running for office yourself, all of those things are ways that we actually can affect a sea change.
Thanks, Jean. Gracie, got about a minute.
Sure. So looking back, when I was in high school, I was really, really involved. And I remember being really excited to vote, but I was really excited for two reasons. My parents voted every election cycle, so it was kind of like just drilled in my head. But the second was my brother was an elected official, so I was honored to go and cast my vote for him. Looking back at my friends, they were just as involved, but I can honestly tell you, I don't remember talking to them about voting. I don't. And so now where I'm at, but I do see on Facebook and social media that their engagement, their involvement, their volunteerism that they exhibited in high school has carried them on. They are voting now. They're very involved. They're leading businesses. Many of them have run for office in South Texas. So I think that continuing to encourage our young adults here in the Harris County region is really important. And I think we are going to see some amazing elected officials, policymakers, business owners, leaders, CEOs and presidents of organizations like ours that are really trying to activate and ignite the voices of our neighbors and our leaders and future generations to really safeguard their interests and truly advocate for what the changes that they want to see in their respective communities.
I think you're all optimists. It's a very elevating conversation. Thanks so much to Gracie, Nabila, and Jean. We're going to take a very short break, and when we return, we'll meet two very civically engaged students, one from the University of Houston and one from Northside High School. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Public Affairs, Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. I'm Linda Cohn with the League of Women Voters, and tonight we're talking about young people and civic engagement. Please call us with your questions or comments. We'll take as many calls as we can possibly manage. The number is 713-807-1794. That's 713-807-1794. If you like to use Twitter, our hashtag is LWVHouston. With us now from Northside High School, Natalie Villarreal, and from the University of Houston, Ariz Kareem. These are two of the most civically engaged young women you will find anywhere. Ariz, you first. Tell us about what you're up to at the University of Houston. Tell us first your major.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much for having me, Linda. I'm a political science major at the University of Houston. This is my second year. I'm a sophomore. And right now what I'm doing is I am part of the Civic Houston internship program with the Hobby School of Public Affairs. And through my internship, I interned for the City of Houston Office of Sustainability. And through my internship, I have done lots of volunteer work for campaigns where I've done canvassing, and I have also become a voter registrar. So I became a deputy voter registrar, and I've already registered about 3 people to vote, which I'm very excited about. For my campus, I am currently working on an event that we hope that we'll have the support of the League of Women Voters on, which is a voting festival for the University of Houston. And we are planning on doing this event as a campus-wide thing. And we will be including the SGA, we'll be including UH Democrats, UH Republicans. We want to make this an event where we can get the students at the university excited about voting and more interested in voting. I think that there's a disconnect between civic mobility and civic engagement. I think young people are very civically mobilized. We protest. We are very political on social media. We're political with each other, but I don't think that we carry out that mobilization and turn it into voting. So that is what we want to encourage through our voting festival that we're going to have before the midterm elections.
Okay, how did you find a home in the civic engagement universe? Were your parents particularly active in public life? A lot of reading, a lot of listening to news broadcasts? Tell me a little bit about why you, and not everyone, why you are so active in the life of your community.
So I think that I was very lucky to have 2 parents that are college educated and 2 parents that are very adamant about supporting my passions. And I don't want to say that I have always loved law and civic engagement and government, but I do think that I have. When I was 6, I saw Legally Blonde for the first time, and it changed my life. I decided I wanted to be an attorney. And since then, I've been interested in civic engagement. I've been wanting to engage in local government and in voting. My parents vote adamantly. They vote in every election that they can get their hands on. We're immigrants. We immigrated here in 2006, and so voting is a sacred right for my parents. Once they became naturalized citizens, they immediately wanted to vote. They immediately wanted to know when the next election was so that they could vote. They could, add their voice to the community and add their voice to the government. So I think that their passion has truly instilled in me a passion for civic mobility and for civic engagement.
What do you say to someone who says, doesn't matter?
So I actually had a professor like that. My professor for sociology was the kind of person who was like, my vote doesn't matter. This is a red state. Nothing that I do matters. I'm not going to vote. I don't vote. And I think, to me, that kind of person who puts up a wall, it's difficult to talk to, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give up. So for that kind of person, I think I always say that your vote matters, and trust me that your vote matters, because my family went through a period where we could not vote. And what we realized is that places, when you cannot vote, you realize how important voting is, because all you see is the events that are happening on TV and you can't affect them. So voting, I think, that's usually what I tell people, is that, like, I was not able to vote. My parents were not able to vote because they were not citizens. And once we're able to vote, we want to affect that change. And the way that we affect change is through voting in this country. And voting is a sacred right that you don't have in other countries, or you don't have everywhere. So if you have the right and you have the ability, you should vote, because it's your civic duty. It's your duty as a United States citizen, and it's your duty as a human who wants to contribute to their society and to their government.
Was your argument persuasive?
Well, you know, he's very stubborn. He's done this for years, but I think he has enough respect and he has enough care for me that he definitely considered it. He definitely listened, and I appreciate that more than anything.
Natalie, tell us about civic engagement in the high schools. Most of the high school students are not quite old enough to vote yet, but very few of them are, and Mi Familia Vota and Baker Ripley are there to make sure those who are registered, and everybody can look forward to voting within a couple of years. How do you prepare them for that?
Well, the few seniors that are able to vote for my school, I encourage them. I encourage them to vote. I persuade them, and I tell them the outcome of, you know, if they vote for that your vote counts. That it's just that you have a voice, and that's what Mi Familia Vota has taught me through this experience of I didn't know much about civic engagement a few months ago, and then this organization really helped me and really put in perspective that my voice does count. And that's what I want the people around me, my friends, my teachers also to know, because some teachers, they don't care, or sometimes the subject, they don't want to talk about it. But I think we should talk about it, because we will soon be adults. We will soon be 18, and we're gonna be able to vote. And you know, we should be politically educated and
Ready.
ready.
Sure. Would you like to see more classroom-based discussion of civic matters, debates, for example, about important issues? Or would you like it better if a group from the outside, like Mi Familia, came to your school and did civic engagement work with you after hours?
I would love for Mi Familia Vota to encourage other students from my high school to, you know, teach them and tell them that their vote does count. And I don't feel like in my area we're really educated about our vote, about our voice, and it would be something that if it were to happen, it would be great. And I know people, they do care about it, and it might seem like we don't, but we do. So,
do you do a lot of social media? Are you active on social media? Do you remind each other with gentle tweets that there's going to be a meeting of Club XYZ or whatever it is at 3:30 in the cafeteria? Be there. Do you do that?
I try to.
Try to?
I try to. Sometimes the meetings are just, you know, 15 minutes, or sometimes they're up to an hour or more. And some people, they have jobs and they don't have time for it.
Yeah. This is something I'd really like you to talk more about. We are all very busy, but I don't know that any group is busier than your average high school student. Many have jobs, many have family responsibilities. You're looking after younger siblings, perhaps. You have sporting activities. This is music lessons. This is all part of the fabric of life. How do you find time to talk politics, to talk about your community?
Well, I love politics. I love arguing. I love just being active in my community. So for me, that is my free time. That is my hobby. So I don't play sports, and the ones that do actually are very civic engaged. They find time in between where they'll tell them, you know, I can't make it to practice this time, but I will tomorrow. So they really find a time to put it in there if they really are committed to it. So
I suppose if it's important to you, you do find the time. But how do you develop a support network, whether it's parents, other adults in the community, school staff? How do you develop a group of adults who are going to support you with your civic engagement inclinations? You can't do it by yourself.
So for me, Mi Familia Vota is what motivates me, or what helps me when I need help.
How did you come to know them?
Me and one of my friends were having a discussion about our former president, and we were just arguing, and then this girl came across me. She's like, hey, I like the way you argue. There's this meeting tomorrow, Mi Familia Vota. I would you know.
This was a fellow student who plucked you out of the
She was like, no, she was just in the classroom, but we were arguing, like we were hardcore arguing, and she came across me. She came after dismissal time. She told me, she's like, come with me, please. So I wasn't able to go that week, but
What year were you in when this happened?
sophomore year.
Sophomore year,
I'm a
okay.
sophomore, and like I said, I wasn't my freshman year. I wasn't in this school in Northside. I was in another school. So when I came to that school, I didn't know much about groups or sports or stuff like that or after school activities, and my family got what was there. So
That's a great story. That's a great civic engagement story. It's almost like a coming to America story. This is a coming to Northside story. What about your school community? Do you find the general atmosphere to be supportive of these extracurricular activities?
I feel like there was this incident that happened in my community about 2 years ago that it hurt our community very deeply, but we learned from it, and we're trying to prevent other stuff to happen like that.
Could you tell us what happened?
Josue Flores was a student. He was 11 years old, and he was walking from school to his house, and he sadly got stabbed 27 times. And
Okay.
so it really hurt our community, and it still does. And we just try to make the best of
This
it.
was your response, was to become?
Was safe walks in Northside. So parents, they just drive around school around dismissal time, and they try to make sure that everybody drives. They drive around from I think 3 to 4:15, and they just drive around the area to make sure that every student is safe. Or if it's raining, I think sometimes they'll give them a ride, and that's how my community we try to help, and we're trying to avoid it. And we just they're very supportive. So those parents, we thank them.
So you came to civic life through a tragedy. And you, Ariz, you came to civic life through a great opportunity.
I did.
Very, very different. We need to wrap up in just a minute, but in closing, what would you like people to know about civic engagement on the campus of the University of Houston?
So what I'd like people to know is that we are holding this event. This event is happening. It's going to happen. We're going to make sure of it. And we just want our students to turn out. We just want university students to be engaged in voting. We want you to know that your rights matter, and the way that you are going to get the change that you want is through voting. Students at the university are engaged in civic mobility. They want change. They participate in walkouts. They participate in protests, but that's not enough. Protesting is not enough. To have your voice truly heard, you have to vote. If you want to affect change, if you want to bring change about, you have to vote. And you have to the reason you have to vote is so that you can pressure your candidates into caring about the issues that you are passionate about. So young people, we have things that we want to happen. We want our tuition to be less. We want student health insurance to be better. I had an incident last semester where one of my friends didn't have health insurance, and she had an emergent condition. She would have died if she didn't get the procedure that she needed, but she was hesitant to even take an ambulance to the hospital because she knew that it would cost a lot, and it's because she doesn't have student insurance. So we need candidates that will advocate for our issues, and the way that we get these candidates' attention is by voting in large numbers. So if we want candidates to care about our issues, we need to vote, and we need to pressure them into that caring.
Thanks so much to Natalie Villarreal from Northside High School and to Ariz Karim from the University of Houston. We're taking another short break, and when we come back, we'll be talking to two extraordinary gentlemen who will tell us about civic engagement at Lone Star College, Tomball. Be right back. Welcome back to Public Affairs, Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. I'm Linda Cohn with the League of Women Voters, and tonight we're talking about young people and civic engagement. With us are two gentlemen from Humboldt Lone Star College. We'd like you to meet Chris Garcia and Antonio Perez. They're both officers in student government. Thank you so much for joining us. Chris, let's start with you. Tell us what got you involved with civic engagement.
Well, I was just really, curious about the voting process, and that got me into contact with some local community leaders, and that in turn got me into being an election judge, election volunteering.
Oh, so this is not on campus, but local community leaders in the wider community.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see.
And then I tried to use that to go ahead and register people on campus, be able to spread the word more about the importance of registering, the importance of voting, the importance of having your voice heard, with different things like phone banks even, and block walking, and trying to recruit other students to just have an effect on at large.
What primed you for this burst of civic engagement opportunity? This got to be something, an experience in your past, in your family, that made you believe.
Yes and no, actually. What actually got me involved was, oddly enough, during the presidential election, there was a lot of different information about how the elections were rigged, I guess, at the time. And I couldn't find good information about how solid the foundation of the voting system was. So I went out to find out for myself. I went out to reach out for different people that were in there, see how I could become a volunteer, see how I could put myself into the gears of that system. Mm-hmm. And with that, I became...
Were you enrolled at Lone Star College at the time?
I was,
okay.
yeah. And
taking any citizenship or civics or
I was,
government?
Actually, at the time, I was the president of the student government. And now I'm the former, and we have a current president here with us. But yeah, absolutely. The civic engagement, it wasn't that heavily in my family, oddly enough, because I feel they felt a little disenfranchised. But I really felt the calling to try to make a change and make some sort of effect in my community.
Antonio, tell us your story.
And so for me, the government involves everybody, no matter what decision that happens or what law is passed. It involves all of us because it affects all of us. And so it took me a while to figure that out, and it's never too late to get involved. And I definitely would like to tell people who are watching to get involved because it's not too late. But slowly figuring that out, starting into Lone Star College, I wanted to figure a way to get involved, a way to start up, and maybe even, just get my foot into the door. And so the best way to start that was getting involved with the Student Government Association. And so luckily enough, I was able to slowly move up to president.
So the idea of a student government association, sort of recapitulating government in general, appealed to you. But you were not civically engaged when you were in high school? You didn't?
No, ma'am, no. So in high school, I was always involved in sports, or more of like an academic classes, or more
Math,
like that
science.
aspect. Yes, ma'am.
Definitely want to hear more about this. What did you think during history class? Were you soaking in all those civic lessons, or were you thinking 15 more minutes and I'm out of here?
More of my, so whenever I was in high school, I was a quarterback. And so as a quarterback, you have to be the leader of the team. You have to remember all your plays. You have to know where each player belongs and what they're supposed to do, because sometimes they rely on you. They're like, hey, what route is this play? And so in my history class, unfortunately, I would use that class as the time to look over my plays, to look over what my receivers should be doing, what my running back should be doing. So unfortunately, I lost that opportunity to actually learn in that class.
Where in your high school, were there community organizations like Baker Ripley, like Mi Familia present to sort of encourage civic engagement and civic engagement opportunities? Did you ever run across that, or were you oblivious?
I've never actually ran across a civic engagement in my high school. I was mostly took part of like leadership programs, just because I really loved the idea of being able to go out there and maybe even motivate people. So I took mostly part of like debate classes, leadership classes, or more like clubs. But those are the two things I've mostly ran into. I've never really came across like a civic engagement type of club or opportunity in high school.
So you're a success story.
I would like to think so.
Chris, you came from a very different path. What do you want to do on the campus of Lone Star College? What's your goal?
Well, I mean, I really hope that we can spread the importance of voting. I know a lot of people say that the youth have difficulty with actually voting.
You mean the mechanics of voting, the rules of the...
Not necessarily that, but just feeling, you know, a lot of times you do by seeing. And a lot of people don't actually know how, you know, they've never walked into a voting booth. A lot of them haven't gone with their parents when they were kids because maybe they were in school.
This guy?
Yeah, I mean, I know our current president now had an idea to partner with hopefully the League of Women Voting. And what we'd love to do is even have voting booths there. Obviously, we know that they can't actually count for votes, but to be able to see how the mechanics work, yeah, so that when they walk in, they don't feel overwhelmed, they don't feel uncomfortable. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say good information. One thing that when we go out to any community event, we always literally plead with people that we're speaking to become ambassadors of good information to their own circles.
Absolutely.
Because there is so much bad information out there.
Yeah,
We have to do, we talk about voter ID, we talk about voter registration, we talk about changing your address. Where do I vote? When do I vote? How do I vote? This is all an opportunity to smoothen the path to the ballot box.
Especially during the beginning, because a lot of students, at least as an election judge, I see a lot of people walking in. A lot of them don't know they actually have to register to vote, right? So that's how you lose a lot of votes. And a lot of times, though, you'll get that student to walk in, excited to vote, show up, and you have to turn them away. And you wonder, you know, is that the last time that they're going to come in? Do they feel like, is that the moment that they feel like, well, I'm just not going to do it? So I feel like if we can find a way to register, to make them feel comfortable when they walk in, they already know what's going on, and they get to vote, they'll be more likely to vote in the future.
How do you encourage people to become informed voters, not only about the mechanics of casting a ballot, because you know no one is born knowing how to vote. It is not an intuitive process. You have to teach, they have to have the information available, the information has to be accessible. How do you get people to focus not only on the mechanics of voting, but on being an informed voter, so they, in the primary election on March the 6th, Harris County had over 200 candidates on the ballot across both the Democratic and Republican parties. Now, if you want to cast an informed vote, you have a lot of homework.
Yeah.
So how do you talk to people about that? It's not just a matter of going to the ballot box, making a tick, and then going off to lunch.
It's very difficult. The ballots are 9 to 15 pages long, depending on what district you're in. It can definitely feel overwhelming. You go in, you think you're just going to do a party, you know, a down ballot type of vote, and then you realize it's not that kind of vote. I think it's difficult. There's a lot of different avenues. Obviously, starting young, showing students at a younger age that it's important, because I look at it, it's like your dirty room, right? If you have a dirty room and your mom always picks up for you, you're never going to learn to pick up after yourself. But if you're taught to pick up after yourself, you know, at a younger age, hopefully it'll be easier for you to keep a clean room, right? And so hopefully at a younger age, if we can learn that voting's important, maybe even when there's voting, have mock votes in school, even at a young age, to show the importance of things like that, to build in that understanding at a younger age, instead of throwing them, you know, or throwing all the youth kind of without any knowledge or experience when they're 18 and they've already set in their ways, understanding that maybe that's not important, they can't make a difference, or different avenues like that.
Let me ask you if student government has a meaningful role in Lone Star College, because there you have elections, right? You're elected officials, both of you. During your term, were you elected?
Well, to be honest, during my term, there wasn't a lot of activism as far as wanting to be in those positions, and because we're a commuter school,
Yeah.
It was very difficult. So we just had a group of people that wanted to be certain positions, and we just kind of either voted within ourselves or decided within ourselves. I believe for this current term, it was I believe chosen by the head of the department, who was going to have the different positions.
Oh, I see.
So we didn't actually
I
have
see.
a full vote. We sent in applications, and then I believe the positions were chosen for us.
Yes,
So let me ask
that's
you,
correct.
would you like to have the student body elect their officers for student government?
Well, I'll let the president go ahead and answer.
Would you
that.
like that? Do you
Yeah,
see
I think that'd be a great idea because that would definitely put it a step forward to practicing voting.
practicing? Yeah.
Correct. And I think the best way to do that is kind of have the same thing as like a presidential election, where you have your talks. That way they can get information.
rehearsing,
on you.
aren't you?
Correct, exactly. And I think that would be a great idea. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Antonio. And thanks to our viewers for joining us this evening. Just a reminder, there are 2 elections coming up in the Houston area, local elections on May the 5th, and the Texas primary runoff elections on May 22nd. You can learn more about these at our website, www.lwvhouston.org. Thanks for joining us tonight. Take good care, and we'll chat again soon.